Yeah.
All right. So when last we talked, we were implementing the game of life. And for those of you who missed it, very simply, life's a little cellular automaton demo, which we can have an argument about whether it's a single-player game or not. I think it is. Wikipedia thinks it's a zero-player game, which I think is dumb. It's the idea is that we evolve forward the state of these cells, and so we start with, and this was the thing that we ended with last class, this. We start with some grid of cells, and what we're going to do is update the cells according to local rules that say how each cell changes according to how what it and its neighbors look like. We're going to do that game, and by doing that, we'll have successive frames of our representation that have evolved according to these rules, and it's going to look really cool and awesome. That's the plan. Yeah? All right, let's make it look really cool and awesome. So I first want to review, I did some changes since class last time. Gets tagged feature is really handy in this case. The class version is v 0.1.0. The version we're at right now is v 0.1.1. Highly recommend tagging interesting versions of things. So let's get diff v 0.1.0 and see what it tells us. Well, I bumped the version, that's nice. I added version numbers for the ND array and rand crates so that we actually get a version that's at least the version we know works. The stars there were a really bad idea, and I said that at the time. I added a license, that's a really good idea. I added a README, that's a really good idea. I added a bunch of comments, because of course I did. I also added, and they're all RustDoc comments, which let me format this documentation as RustDoc if I want. I also added this use standard format self, we'll see why. That didn't change, that code didn't change, that code didn't change, this code didn't change. I moved the random number generator out of the main program and just into this. I decided it was fine to create a new random number generator for each time I built a world, because who really cares, and it just makes the code simpler, so I made that change. This is interesting. I completely rewrote the formatter, and this was the biggest change I made. Remember before I was whining about having to iterate over the actual dimensions because I didn't know how to use ND array? After class, I looked up how to use ND array. It turns out you can do it like this. It turns out ND array has an axis iterator that you can iterate on axis 0. Actually, I thought I fixed that to do the cool people thing, but for now, let's just take that. Axis 0 here being the rows, right? I could also iterate on axis 1, which is the columns if I so chose. And with that, then I can, I actually changed it to actually collect all the characters and write them in a single write, which I think is both, which I know is more efficient and suspect is easier to read. So now it actually takes everything in the row and just iterates over that, turns it into the display characters we wanted, and by the way, those are moved into a structure. Oh, I guess they're already in the structure. We can collect that and write that. So that was another change I made. And that's it. So didn't change too much, but it's always a good idea to start a session by reviewing your changes and the changes your coworkers have made before you actually start diving in and doing new things. Right? I think we can agree that I didn't do anything super dramatic, but I think we can also agree the changes I did make it nicer. So let's go with that and say, well, what's the next task? We've got it creating and printing a random board. Now what do we want to do? Add rules, make it play live, right? So how are we going to do that? Somebody give me a sketch of a design. It's usually a good idea to have a design before you start typing code. What's the general plan here? Outline it for me. Well, one an infinite loop at the end of the day, but what is each iteration of that loop going to do for me here?
Change your neighbors.
Say that again?
Change your neighbors.
Change our neighbors. Well, whose neighbors?
Each square's neighbors?
Each square's neighbors, right? It's gonna have to, it looks like to make a new frame, we're gonna have to iterate over the squares of the frame. Iterate over each cell of the frame and look at its neighbors and decide how it changes. Yeah? Is that the plan? And can we change it in place?
No, I think we need a second copy.
Why?
Because if you change it while you're looking at it, then it will
Then it
not
won't follow the
work.
rules, right? If I decide to make a cell disappear, right? If I decide to kill in the somewhat harsh terminology of this game, a cell, then that cell won't be around to keep its neighbors alive, so they'll die too when they didn't need to, right? So we're gonna do this stepwise, which means we're gonna need some temporary copy of the thing. We're gonna have to produce a new one from the old one somehow. So we have the general outline of what we want to do. We want to make a function that takes an input frame, produces a brand new output frame, right? With the output frame cells, living or dying according to the rules of the input frame. Yeah? Yeah? Cool. So one of the key things we said is we need to iterate over the neighbors of a cell. Well, that's a thing to say. Do we have any tools around that would help us iterate over the neighbors of a cell?
Yeah, your weird neighbor alphabet
Oh
thing.
yeah, we wrote a neighbor iterator not too long ago in class. So maybe a good place to start would be to sort of identify resources, and the resource we want is this neighbor iterator, and it just so happens I have the URL of that iterator floating around. It was some dumb thing stuck in Playrest. So let's get that into the clipboard, start a new browser, go there. The most awkward way ever to share code, but it works. We'll copy this whole thing, and then we'll paste it. And let's see what we've just rotted here. Okay, here's our neighborhood iterator. It has a new that takes x bounds and y bounds? What are the x and y there? Oh, no. Oh, right, it iterates over the neighbors of a given point. And it has the bounds Rx. These names are terrible, right? This needs to be clearly, but I'll do that outside of class, thoroughly commented. The names need to be changed around so you can actually understand it. We can make a new iterator that iterates over the neighbors of X, obeying the upper bounds given by Rx. Looks like we have that method. When you have to reverse engineer your own code only a couple days later, you know you've gone wrong. This clip function we don't care about. And here's the actual iterator. So this is going to be a new module, I think. So we can get rid of this. This is not a thing. Right? We might want to keep this as we might want to keep this as what? What would we do with this? What is it good for? It's a test! It's a find function, right? Test neighbor. Tests are good. We like tests. So we'll just mark it test. And is there anything wrong with that? Well, only the one thing, right? The test doesn't actually do anything right now. It just prints, right? So we'd actually have to modify that test to actually test, right, that the right answer came out. I don't feel like doing that right this second. So again, that's a good thing to do after class. So we won't throw this code away, but for now we won't use it either because we don't need it for anything. Now what needs to be pub here? Well, nothing needs to be pub because it's going to be inside a module we own. But in principle, what would need to be pub here? Well, no, it does because the module visibility. Yeah, I need this to be pub. Do I need the internals of the iterator to be pub? No, I don't want them to be, right? Because I don't want people peeking inside my iterators. That would be embarrassing. And does new need to be pub?
Yes.
Yeah, because otherwise how am I going to iterate? Does clip need to be pub? No, right? That's just an internal detail of this. Does next need to be pub? Trick question. Does next need to be pub?
I don't think so.
No, because implementations of iterators, you don't get a control whether they're public or not. The trait, implementations of traits, you don't get a control whether the methods are public or not. The trait itself decides, not the implementation. So you literally can't declare that pub. The compiler will give you an error message. So that's everything. So now how am I going to include this neighborhood iterator in life, what's it called? Oh, main.rs. Darn it, I don't want to send mail. That's not what I wanted to do at all. Attempt to delete mini buffer of Sol at ordinary memory. That's awesome. Okay. Okay, I give up. I don't know what happened there. Emacs, it's a way of life. So how do I use this neighborhood code in my Rust program? Do I have to make a whole neighborhood crate? Wouldn't be a terrible idea, but do I have to? What can I do instead? Oh, we already did this, right? We did this just in the first hour, right? So there's nothing new here. How do I do it again? Say it again. Mod neighborhood. Is that enough? Am I good there? What else do I need to do? Yeah, if I want to use it bare, use the stuff from neighborhood bare as opposed to having to qualify it, then I want to use neighborhood : star. Notice that this isn't necessary, right? I could just write neighborhood : everywhere I wanted to refer to something about the neighborhood. That's absolutely a legitimate thing to do. Here, I think I want to just actually use this, right? It's a small program. I don't want to make it noised up with dumb names. Module names. All right, so that should be good enough. And now we've got a neighborhood iterator. Oh, that'll be helpful. So what do I want to do? Where do I want to put this implementation of the thing that makes the next frame? Where should it live? It's a good place for it. Should it be just a standalone function? Is that a good idea? It's not a terrible idea, right? It would work fine. Does anybody have a better idea? You don't. Anybody else have a better idea? Can anybody guess why I have the screen open to the impl world? Could it be a method of world? Should it be? Maybe. What are the arguments for and against as opposed to a plain old function? Let's do some software development here, folks. What's the software engineer tell you? What's your inner software engineer tell you should happen here? Well, it's object-oriented, sort of. Hard to argue with that. Right, I mean, the thing is that, what do I need to make a new world? What do I absolutely have to have? I need the old world, right? The only way to make a new world is to either say new or to make a new world from an old world, right? What would I call that old world if I put this inside the method?
Copy world.
Okay, let's do it, and then we'll see if you like it. Yeah? What did I decide to call it? Self, right? I really, you know, this is a thing that produces a new world from myself, by the way. And by the way, should I do it here? What's the other alternative? Once you've seen a next method appear, what are you really super tempted to do? oh, maybe the best thing to do, because it really isn't all that hard, right? It costs me basically nothing at this point, right? Is to actually impl iterator for world. Oh, that would be kind of cool, actually, because now I can do iterator functions on my world, right? Oh, well, let's do that. That'll be funner. Impl iterator item equals iterator for world type item equals world. Can I do that? Why can't I do that?
Because you're borrowing it or assigning it to a different, you're moving it.
Yeah. Do I care? In fact, what's the signature of fun next for an iterator? Yeah? Wow, that looks remarkably like the signature we just wrote up above, right? Oh, except it's and mute self, right? Because the iterator needs to maintain the internal state, right? What state does my iterator need to maintain here? Like, how's this iterator going to work? Oh, shoot. This is starting to look more complicated than we actually thought, right? Because remember, it isn't that this thing's going to return a world every time, right? Oh. Well, we have some choices. I think the cool choice would be to do this. I want to get all the iterator coolness. Let's do this. Whoa, what are we going to do here? What's our plan? Well, let me show you. And maybe we should return the address of a world or something like that. Just leave it a world. Oh, no, it has to be, I don't get that. Let's do this. This will be it. We'll update and return a clone, yeah? So now my iterator produces a set of successive states of the world, but now the world updater is going to be in place. Wait, I thought we said we had to make a copy to make the world update. How are we going to do that? Well, let's start writing our update function and see if we can make it work out somehow. So now I still need an update function, right? It's not going to be called next any. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. Where did the impl thingy go? There it is. I still need an update function, right? But now the function doesn't return anything; it just updates the world. Yeah. Cool. Well, if I'm going to do this in place, do I still need a copy? I think so too, right? So how do I get a copy? How do I make a copy of self at this point? Dot clone, right? Self.clone. Right? And how do I get a new world to conquer? Oh, maybe new should be self.clone. Maybe that would be a smarter thing, right? And maybe I should make new be mutable, right? And maybe I should get rid of the mutability on old just so I don't screw up, right? Oh, cool. I literally got rid of the mutability on old now, right? So I can't accidentally write on the old one anymore. Is that step necessary? No. Is it a thing we should do? Well, maybe. We don't like screwing up. This keeps us from screwing up. That's always a good thing. So I now have my old world. Well, I now have my new world. I'm getting done with this whole thing pretty nicely. Now what do I do? What was my plan again?
Update neighbors.
Update all the neighbors. Update using all the neighbors. So what does my outer loop look like?
For each cell.
Oh, there's this for each loop that loops over the cells. Do we already have one of those?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, what's the obvious thing to do?
Make it a function.
Reuse. And the obvious way to reuse is copy paste. Is that what I'm going to say we should do?
No.
So how should I make a thing that does the thing with the thing?
Make a function.
I need something that makes a function, but what should that function do? How does it possibly work, right? What are my choices?
You pass it a cell and have it return some changed cell.
So I'm going to add a function to world, and you want me to do what now? I think you're on the right track. Explain it again. I got a function to world called loop over. Let's call it that. It's a dumb name. We won't call it that. But let's call it for each cell, whatever. So I have a for each cell function in world. What should its signature be? What should it take as arguments? What should it return?
It should take a cell and return a changed
But
cell.
for each cell is supposed to loop over the cell, so it shouldn't take a cell. What should it take? It's just going to take and self, right? Or and mute self or something. What should it? But how's it going to loop over things?